I apologize for my sunglasses. I'm getting kind of addled in my old age, and I left my glasses somewhere. And I'm super, I have really bad eyesight. And I'm also trying to avoid a little intimacy here, because it feels like you're going to fall on me at this point. I like this place. I feel like I'm, do you ever watch How to Get Away with Murder? It's such a good show. I feel like you can get away with murder. It feels like that thing. Anyway, I'm going to do a quick presentation because Dan Gilmore had not really wanted me to present, and so I was going to do a very quick one and then talk to Evan because I'd rather answer your questions than anything else. This is a presentation I've been working on for a while, and I talk a lot about entrepreneurialism, and I write a lot about entrepreneurs, and so I'm going to go through this super, super fast. It's about being an entrepreneur because we have been, Walt and I, for many years, as far back as when we started All Things D within the Wall Street Journal. I'd been pushing really hard for them to move into the digital arena because I'd been covering it and had written about AOL and other technologies, Amazon, Yahoo, and things like that way back when. And I kept saying to the Journal executives who really, really didn't get it back then, and still they get it now, let's just say, that the internet was really important and we needed to go into it, and they really didn't want to and didn't know what a blog was, and I kept saying it's going to be big, this is going to be important, and they didn't want to, and so we really did strike out within the Journal, even though we were within the Dow Jones organization as an independent entity, and then moved out in 2013, and then, just like all startups, immediately sold ourselves. So I'm just going to go through this super quickly, some trends that I'm seeing in Silicon Valley I think you all need to be aware of. Some of them more pertinent than others, but all very pertinent for anyone who makes content. And I'm literally going to go race through these really quickly. Is that right? Oh, of course, okay. The internet and people in technology and Silicon Valley are vast narcissists and love to talk about themselves. I know that when electricity started, Thomas Edison and Tesla went on different barnstorming tours around the United States and discussed electricity, showed off light bulbs, but the internet people will not stop fucking talking about themselves. And talking about the technology is something that I find really irritating because technology doesn't really matter, but they do like to talk about the technology. So one of my before I retire, I would like them to stop talking about technology. When you got up this morning, I always say this, when you got up this morning, you didn't say, the electrical grid, as I turn on the lights. You don't discuss, motor vehicles as you drove here. But internet people really love to talk about themselves, and most of them are largely dull, so it creates a really big problem for me every day of my life. But it is the job I selected. Anyway, so the point I want to make here is the next age of computing is really going to be about the normals, which is everybody else except the people who live in Palo Alto. So the next stage of computing will be about feelings and not technology, and you're noticing a lot of important companies. I'd use Snapchat as an example that's a little less focused on the technology and more what the technology does. This is a pretty basic idea, but every single technology has gone through this thing where when it becomes invisible, and that's what I mean to talk about. And I call it the human age. And this is an old thing. It doesn't have a phone where you get even further down, but I think it's kind of interesting that we've ended up exactly the same place that we started. No one uses desktops anymore, obviously, but it's the same idea, is that we're sort of back to the same staring at our screens, like ridiculous apes that we are. So here's some of the key trends. I'm going to go through them super quick. I have I add to them. It keeps adding, and I'm really bad at PowerPoint or whatever this is. And I think it's going to just run off the page. But every time I see a trend that I think is important, I'll go through them super quickly. So this is BuzzFeed. I know that recently they haven't made as many revenues before. I don't think it's that big a deal. Most people want to pile on BuzzFeed the minute they show one sign of weakness, which is inevitable. But what I do think is interesting about this slide is, I don't know if you remember I'm going to get a new one with a new incident that they publicized, but do you remember when Katy Perry and the left shark had an issue? One of our greatest, stories of the year. BuzzFeed, this is just a sampling of what BuzzFeed did. And this is maybe a third of the stories they put up, which I thought was fascinating. 18 things the left shark is totally thinking. It was a 23-second incident, which I think 18 things is a lot, but they didn't. Which Katy Perry halftime show shark are you? That was a poll. Here's what Twitter thought about Katy Perry's halftime show. 15 times you were the shark from Katy Perry's Super Bowl halftime performance. This is indicative of a lot of sad millennials making these stories and putting them up on BuzzFeed. And what I thought was really interesting about this was that this is A/B testing gone wild. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing. What they do is they throw up 20, 30, 40 examples on a story, alleged story, and see what works. And I find this to be genius in a lot of ways. And it's a company, obviously, that's much more data. They do everything. They're not data informed, they're data driven. And so they were trying out to see what would work. And so they literally have, if you ever go there, scads of people working on these kind of things and data figuring out which one of these things is most clickable. The fact that they used it with such an inane story is even more fascinating to me. But you have to really understand data. Obviously, this is something that you all know. You need to really, more than you think you do, you need to really understand data patterns and what people are clicking on and what genres they're clicking on. And it's much more, I think journalists don't spend nearly enough time understanding how data works. This is, if I'm old, this is from Clockwork Orange. That's Google Glass, obviously. I always call Google Glass the only device the Silicon Valley makes that makes supermodels unfuckable. So, you know what I mean? Like, oh no, thanks you. No, I think not. And I mean both men and women, to be clear. What's interesting is the ubiquitous. The idea behind, people always dump on Google Glass, and you're right, it's a terrible device. But the fact of the matter is the idea of what it was behind is a very important idea, ubiquity of computing wherever you are, especially around the face. And you're seeing this in VR, AR, and all kinds of different things. But there's going to be a ubiquitousness of communication, things in front of you, screens everywhere, and all kinds of stuff. And you've got to be thinking this way, is how people are getting their information. And that's obviously already obvious in a mobile thing, but the mobile is just the beginning of where that's going to go. And so if you think this thing is going away, it absolutely is not. And there's a lot of stuff they're trying on the wrist, they're trying on the body, they're trying in front of you, they're trying different screen forms, disposable screen forms. So you've got to think about ubiquity of things, which of course adds to the horror show that is journalism today. But it's a really important thing to imagine of where people are getting your stuff and be aware of what they're doing, and then creating content that fits those form factors. I do think stuff around the eyes is going to be important, just not the way Google did it. They created a device that you reacted to it, rather than all successful devices, to me, it reacts to you versus you reacting to it. And Google Glass forced you to react to it. And that's why besides being incredibly ugly, is the reason it didn't work. There's a device I've been talking about a lot lately, the Amazon Alexa. I don't know how many of you have it. I do. I have 17 of them in my house. I love the Amazon Alexa. I want to date the Amazon Alexa. It is my new relationship. It's a great, if you don't have it, it's not very expensive. There's one called the Echo Dot that's very much less expensive. You should try it. If you're a journalist, you need to understand voice-activated information retrieval, and it's fantastic. And they have things called skills, and you can add anything to them. There's a skill for news, like you ask for your news, you ask for a joke, you ask for the weather, you ask for an Uber, whatever. And there's even one there where you ask it to compliment you, which I use every day. You look good, Kara. Thank you, Alexa. It's really nice. It's a nice, anyway, you need to use it. Just get one, like tomorrow, right now. Order it right now. You're all on your line right now, on the line. So again, it's still also going to be about brand. Brand is incredibly important. I think we forget that in this era because it's so noisy and messy, but brand is critically important as you move forward. I think the Recode brand has a brand that everybody gets, kind of sassy, difficult, and yet factual, yet not too cheerleady, not cheerlead at all, actually, but not too snarky. But we think a lot about everything we do and what the brand is when we're going forward, whether it be Recode Decode, whether it be our Too Embarrassed to Ask podcast, whether it be our events. We have a brand, we stick to it, we're very firm, and you have to stick to what you're supposed to be with people in this era, and it actually helps you if you're genuine. I just like this. This was from Whisper, which I think closed, I don't know. But I like this, that they cared about which one they use a cab and not Uber or Lyft, so the sex was off. Anyway, it will be geolocated. This is another obvious thing, is everything is geolocated now, and you will be more and more. Sensors are critical, sensors and where you are and how you're located, especially in commerce, but which is going to be a part of content delivery, are really important to think of geolocation and what's going on. Obviously, the phones in your pockets are literally stalking devices, and so how you think about delivering content has to be with geolocation in mind and how people are receiving it and when they're out and about, because nobody sits in front of a computer anymore, absolutely not. And so you have to be imagining that. Again, I'm rushing through these. This we all know, right? I just interviewed Ariana Huffington for my podcast for her sleep book. Oh, Cara, you have to turn off your devices. Of course, she has 17 in her purse. I'm like, I'm totally on to her. But it will never turn off. She's like, put it in another place. I'm like, no, it's the best relationship I've ever had. Why would I remove it from my person? It's a good podcast. It just posted. Anyway, it will never turn off. We understand this concept. It's about continuous partial attention. One Microsoft researcher dubbed it many years ago to me. Again, when you're a content creator, an online creator, you have to think of continuous partial attention. They're not paying attention, yet they are, yet they're always on, and it will never turn off. And by the way, when they start to get, everything becomes a screen, which everything will become a screen, it'll really never turn off. And you have to be thinking about this as a content creator. It will mean a dog is a dog again. This is, I should change that number up there, but this was the famous 1993 thing from the New Yorker on the internet, nobody knows your dog. Today, everybody does. What I mean by that is you have to be genuine in who you are when you're online. And as a content brand or a person or a reporter or whatever else you happen to be, you really got to think about your genuineness and what you're communicating. It's a similar thing to the brand, but you have to not be non-genuine. It really doesn't work, and you really don't do well if you're not communicating genuinely who you are. You also have to be interesting, which is a challenge for a lot of people, obviously. But you have to be genuine. I always make the example of Kim Kardashian, which everyone, Kim Kardashian. But the fact of the matter is she has 700 million social media followers. She cannot be doing something wrong to be getting to that level. I know that may not be the metric you want to use, but she's been rather successful employing social and digital means to become famous. And it works, and people really enjoy the stuff she creates. And I would urge you to follow her, because it's really fun to follow her. She does great pictures. She uses it a lot. She does a lot of it. It feels like she does a lot of it herself, and I think she might, because some of them are so tasteless. You're like, nobody could have done that except for her. Another person who does it a lot is Rupert Murdoch, and you know it's him, because it's like anti-Semitic over here, anti-Muslim over here, and you're like, the head of the person who's head of communications for News Corp is always like, oh, Kara, I can't stop him. I want to grab that iPad out of his hand. But, he's genuine to who he is, even though that's who he is. So you have to really be thinking about that as a reporter when you're communicating. It's a really effective tool. I use Twitter. I'm quite a lot on Twitter and Instagram and all the others, and it really is me doing it. And I think it's really helpful for our brand to have me as a I don't want to say ambassador, it sounds so inane, but to be myself. And I know journalists like to say I'm very, I don't want to take a side. Well, you really do have an opinion, and it's really hard in this new medium not to represent yourself. And I do, and I think it's fine, and I think journalists have a stick up their butt about it a little bit. It will always be transmitting. This was interesting. The only reason I like this is because I can't believe this guy was peeing and then managed to tap this out. You know what I mean? And why did he want it to? What does he care? It's just it was sort of, so my point of this is that it's always transmitting. I know, right? What the hell is wrong with this person? In any case, it'll always be transmitting. There is not an errant thought that people do not communicate well online now. There's nothing that people don't say. And they're always communicating, they're always taking pictures. There's never a moment when you're not taking a picture. I was at my kid's birthday yesterday. Of course, we took 912 pictures and then immediately posted them. At some point, I've decided at maybe 65, I'm gonna become a hermit and never communicate communicate anything in my life again. But right now, there's not a time where people do not share now and do not share digitally and do not feel a need, an impulse, an addiction to doing so. So you have to understand that when you're writing things and when you're getting things out, it's a consistent transmission. You cannot think of, this 9 to 5. I grew up the Washington Post. It was a very 9 to 5 kind of thing. You have to really be thinking of always being transmitting and reacting and thinking of your audience doing the same. I think it's really important. This is another one. Home is where your pants aren't. I think that's the most genius sentence I've ever seen. I don't know why. I love it. Like, what does it mean? Like, anyway, in any case, wearabling. I call it wearabling. Wearables are really important. I have issues. I've just did a recent podcast about unwearables. I have every single wearable device known to man in a box, like next to the bread maker in my house. So one of the things that's important, though, even though I insult wearables because I don't think they're quite right yet, wearables are going to be increasingly important. Wearable shirt, it's not wearable. Every shirt is wearable, but most of them. So you have to be thinking of wearables and on your body sensors and things like that are coming. And there's a lot of stuff. And it's starting to get there. It's still somewhat useless. I think we can all agree that understanding our steps is really not the most important thing in the world. And there's a point where you're going to have these wearables where literally you're going to eat a donut in the morning, as I did this morning, for example, and suddenly I'm tired and my shirt is going to say, "You fucking idiot, how did you eat that donut? Now get up and walk and also have an apple immediately." And start to really tell you what you need to do, because it will monitor your blood sugar, and monitor all kinds of things. Wearables will be useful, and they actually start giving you excellent advice. This is the last few. It will make you expose yourself. Again, that's the same thing about genuine. Of course, we've all taken a naked selfie. Hello. Let's move on. But you have to expose yourself. You cannot be hidden. If you're shy, you're not going to do well in this environment. I really admire shy people. I'm not one of them. But you have to expose yourself. And then it will be analog. And for those of you who are older, also Silent Green, now with more girls. I like that. I love that thing. Anyway, there's a lot of things going analog. We know about the Internet of Things. Steve Case just wrote a book called The Internet of Everything, which is everything, which is around healthcare, food, driving. Obviously, transportation is a really important area. That's what a wonderful thing that's happening around transportation right now with all these companies rethinking something that really hurts our environment and needs to change and hurts our life, really. It will very much be analog about your smart homes and things like that. Soylent is just one of these things. Food technology is super interesting. How we create and eat food and understand nutrition is a big deal in Silicon Valley now. I think Soylent's kind of gross. Also, the guys who founded Soylent, when they first came to me and showed me their Soylent thing, which I declined to drink, they're like, "You have to." I'm like, "No, I really don't. Like, I'm not that kind of journalist. I take your word that it's delicious." So they brought me, and I said, "Well, that's quite a name." And they're like, "Well, it's made of soy." And I was like, "Yeah, but come on, Soylent Green is people." And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh God, millennials. Good God, God love them." Anyway, so you have to be thinking about like the things in the home, like the Amazon Echo and other things like that. But there's so much going on in the analog space now. It's really, the next era is all about sensors and cars and things that actually really count. One of the things I always say is that Silicon Valley, for the most part, is big minds chasing small ideas. There's some really big ideas going on now in Silicon Valley. And then, last of all, oops, it will be political. Oh my God, this race. Good God. That's all we have to say. I mean, I'm not moving to Canada like everybody else, but it's, I can't stand when people say that. It's our country, for goodness sake, even if we get either one of these people in there. I'm with her, like, in any case. But, I mean, how could I not be, honestly? A lesbian from San Francisco, I kind of have no choice, although it could be interesting if I picked the other guy. I'd have to, like, poke my eyes out, of course. But in any case, it will be political. The politics are getting involved really heavily in digital things. Microsoft just sued the DOJ, the Apple friggin' iPhone thing, which is really important. The government, especially because a lot of the things that are changing, healthcare, cars, is going to get so involved in a lot of this stuff. Mostly the government is usually internet idiotic. They don't know anything about how this has worked and have not been, except for inventing it in the first place, have not been really important. But now it absolutely be political. It's really important. I find it really disturbing and worrisome, and has a really big issue around democracy. I mean, the fact that the FBI, and not all the government agrees with this, thinks that that solving the crisis with ISIS comes down to one fucking iPhone. I don't get, but it's fine. I get their point, and it's going to be it's important that tech people and content people really understand quite how much this is going to matter. And the sequel, are we in a bust? I don't know. No. The digital technology, yes, we are. The Journal writes this story every single 5 years, the exact same story. They should just recycle the same, oh, yes, now it's a bubble, now it's over. And then they'll write this, the next story will be about parties where, I don't know, Sean Parker, you know, rents Beyonce to make dinner or something like that. I don't know. In any case, it doesn't matter. There's going to be money going into this. This is obviously the future. I mean, you're going to get these stories, but who cares? And you're not, and startups will be valued less or more. It doesn't really matter at this point. And then last, this just makes me laugh. I feel this is my job, pointless, incessant barking. Anyway, I think that's it. Evan, come on up.
The Recode brand is not too snarky, maybe the biggest lie told over the last 24 hours.
I love this guy's shirt. I love your shirt. It's fantastic. I keep staring at it. I'm like, I want to take it off of him and take it home. Anyway, sorry.
So there's going to be, the majority of the time we're going to spend will be answering your questions.
Yes.
And so I don't want to go back over your presentation, except to say Trump Swisher 2016 sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, wrong.
Not going to happen?
You know what? Although, you know, my son, you know, I announced I'm interested in running for mayor of San Francisco, and because that's the inevitable next step. And my son, who is going to be 18 at the time that I think I'm going to run, was like, I'm not sure I'm voting for you, Mom. And I'm like, what? Like, I thought I had just had that one vote. And I said, well, why? And he goes, I don't know. You got to really convince me with what you want to do and things like that. This is an 11-year-old who I really wanted to pop at this point. I've never hit him, but this was close. And so he was like saying, I want you to know what you want to do about this and this and that. And I go, well, what are your suggestions of what I should do? And he goes, well, I think you should be the liberal Trump, which I thought was actually kind of genius.
The liberal Trump.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, he has to see who you're running against, right?
Yeah.
It's a choice, not a referendum.
Yes, exactly. That's true.
At 18.
Oh, it's not? Oh, well.
Sorry,
okay.
Unless you're just running alone.
That would be nice.
I want to ask you about 5 entities and have you give us, since you're apparently not shy or retiring and have strong points of view, it would be interesting to have you in sort of game show speed round mode.
Sure.
Give us the sort of 30-second headline about these entities and where we are right now. Help us think about them, and then we're going to open up the thing for questions. Google,
I think it's still a very powerful company. It's super innovative. It's doing all sorts of crazy. The moonshot stuff is a little bit unusual. I think they're seeing a little bit of pushback from a lot of the stuff they're trying. I like that they're trying. I think they're in a little bit of trouble given the search paradigm is Neanderthal and is changing, and so they've obviously pushed into Android and other areas. It remains to be seen. I mean, I don't think search is ending anytime soon, but it's certainly not the paradigm going forward, and they're challenged by Facebook and Snapchat and other ways people discover, especially Facebook.
New leadership of the company versus old.
At Google?
Yeah.
Sundar Pichai is the new CEO of Google, and he's fantastic. He's really measured and a wonderful guy, lovely guy. Larry and Sergey are still strange as ever. You know, I don't know what they're doing. Who knows what they're up to? Okay. I think like Larry wants to get on his rocket ship and go back to the planet Org, but I don't know.
And Sundar Pichai will be at your
yes, he will. He's terrific.
Code
he's very different. He's not. He's an operator, not like a founder vision. He's a very smart guy, obviously. But you know, you have these founder visionaries like Larry and Sergey who are just crazy, and then you have the people that take over and run the show afterwards.
Apple.
Well, you know, Tim Cook's done rather well. I think there. I think after the death of Steve Jobs, who was indeed a visionary and a very complicated and complex person. You know, people were worried about where Apple was going. I think I'm really quite, I have to say, I have admiration for him around this FBI thing. I think it's really hard to do that. I think it's
Are
difficult.
you not sympathetic to the idea that there's a greater good?
Of course. Of course.
So give me. So where do you split?
I was nearly in the CIA. You know, I wanted to join the CIA, so I understand. I wanted to, you know.
So where do you split it along the continuum?
I think in the history the government has always overreached. I don't think there's any point where they don't say they need more information than they actually need. And I think that in this digital environment, it's very dangerous to overreach. And if you have Microsoft suing the DOJ, someone's overreaching. And so I think that, which is a conservative company by comparison, I think that it's difficult because these digital technologies are being used, but the fact of the matter is our problems around the globe are not solved by digital solutions necessarily. And that it's like reporting. Basic on-the-ground reporting is what gets great stories, not because you can crunch some data necessarily. Although data journalism is great, I think it's a question of who do we trust: Google and Apple and Facebook or our government. And that's what's happening here. It's sort of they've got a lot of our information.
And that's an easy choice for you.
No, I don't know what to do because I think they're all evil. So that's an issue that I have. But I think that if I was in the government, I'd push for more information. I get it. But people within the government disagree on it because, like, I had Ash Carter, who's the defense secretary, who kind of is on Apple's side. He's for strong encryption protections and things like that. He doesn't need that information. Now, the FBI wants the easy path, so they want to get to this iPhone. But the things they're asking for from Apple are ridiculous, as far as I'm concerned.
So back to Apple. Is Tim Cook enough of an operator? I was interested in your distinction between Larry and Sergey on the one hand and Sundar Pichai on the other hand. So is he enough of an operator?
Yeah, I think he was the guy behind Steve Jobs who made the trains run on time. That's really was his job. I think some of their products are. I think the Apple Watch, I think we can all agree, is just not quite up to speed for what they were intending, what he was intending. That was his big reveal. I think that they have to keep innovating. I think their platform is getting a little stale, and they obviously have to keep innovating. Their software is just awful for anyone who's used Apple software. It's just the worst. They have lots of opportunities, but they're pretty conservative, so you wonder, things like Snapchat and other things and Facebook. That guy is really innovative as far as I'm concerned, Zuckerberg.
Well, so that was my next. You teed it up perfectly, Facebook.
I think Zuckerberg is really innovative and interesting and constantly changing. He's not the first out the gate with things. Obviously, Facebook Live has been, Twitter did Vines and Periscope and things like that.
I'm interested to hear you say a kind word about somebody.
Oh, I like Mark Zuckerberg. I didn't initially.
But isn't his public brand annoying?
Yes.
So why is he allowed his public brand? Is it like crazy like a fox?
No, I don't think he is annoying
anymore. To be annoying, but behind the scenes I'm actually better than
No, I don't think he is annoying anymore.
You don't think
so? I think he was. I think he's the reason I like Mark Zuckerberg, two reasons, is he's always challenging himself, which is sometimes, like, his learning of Chinese can be a little bit twee, like, okay, now you're going to speak Chinese. But he's speaking Chinese, like, are you? Like, I don't mean it's like, I'm sorry. I mean,
there's a lot that I'm not doing. We don't have enough time to go through the things I'm not doing.
I think he is a thoughtful person, and so I like that. He's always improving. He's always trying to become better. I always like someone like that, and he also sees his faults, which you don't see a lot among the narcissists of Silicon Valley, of which are rife. And he's less of a narcissist than the others, so I suppose I prefer him. And when I first met him. The first time he walked into the office, and he was the person. He wasn't the person in that movie, by the way, because he doesn't talk that much. The guy in the movie was like blabby as can be. But he walked in the office and he said, "I heard you think I'm an asshole." That's what he said. The first thing he ever said to me, and I said, "Other people think you're an asshole. I've never met you, so I don't know enough about you to know if you're an asshole. Perhaps I will come to that conclusion very soon. Right now, immediately, I'm thinking you're an asshole for saying that." And so it was kind of an interesting opener. But he's actually he's a very thoughtful, I think the stuff they're doing at Facebook couldn't happen with someone in charge that wasn't thoughtful. And they're constantly innovating on that platform.
So Facebook is not the evil empire, as is often said to be the case?
I think who says they're an evil empire? That's Google.
Everybody? I
really?
mean, the whole concern about whether Facebook is mucking with all of our
with
privacy.
Publishers, yes. Yeah, the thing is, publishers rush to them to be on the platform. I mean, it's not different from what AOL did. If you remember, at first AOL was the friend of content providers. They'd have those lovely get-togethers, and then they screwed them.
Then they changed, yeah.
Then they changed. So I don't know if it's necessarily I think is the paradigm is shifting for publishers is really problematic, but they'll flock to them if it works. You'll flock to them if it works. I'm on the fence of how much you should give over to Facebook, but I'm on the fence over how much you should give to any platform. But do you have a choice? Like, readers aren't coming to your websites. Readers aren't coming to, nobody comes to a website anymore. Right? So
Amazon.
Again, another person, difficult personality. I think people think he's sort of a smiling, friendly guy. I think he's real tough. He's a real tough customer. I do think they're very innovative. I think what he's done around shopping and delivery and the Amazon Echo has surprised me because he did a terrible job on the Fire and the phone, but he keeps at it. You know, he keeps at it. And I think he has done more to transform our economy than in the internet economy than anybody else in real terms. In real terms,
you're a former Post person. He seems so far to not have effed up the Post.
Well, it's like a comma on his money, right? He doesn't
right, but
care.
still, I mean, but you know that it could be the bad end or it could be a not bad end, and so far we're more on the not bad end.
Yeah. No, I think he's given the money. I think he doesn't mind losing the amount of money he's probably losing. You know, it's probably a small amount of money to him. Right. I think he's not involved himself that much, and he's giving them what you would think they would need, you know, kind of stuff. He's hired a wonderful editor and stuck by. You know, it's just everything's working in that regard, and I think, you know, you couldn't find. I'm not one of the people that thinks former newspaper owners were any walk in the park. So I don't like, oh my God, it's, you know, it's.
I miss the Grahams, I miss the Chandlers.
No, the Grahams were a special, the Grahams were a special family, but most of them are just.
You mean generally that most.
Generally, they're awful
we've
human beings,
romanticized
right?
the
Yeah,
past
so
of
come
newspapers.
on, like come on, the Chandlers, the, oh God, the
All right,
Binghams,
the last
the
thing.
Murdochs,
Well, you've already told us what you think about him.
I like Richard Murdoch.
You do?
Rupert. Yes, I do. He's really. I don't like him. It's like liking Satan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but you like Satan, right?
I'm going to go on a limb and say that may be tweeted.
No, that probably, no, but he's really, come on, he's done some amazing things, and he's really smart, and he loves media. I'm not sure his children.
And he's survived, not in the physical sense,
really
but right in the corporate
you know,
sense.
and the stuff he does around entertainment's, you know, he's got great executives there. I mean, you can't just, that just doesn't happen. Like, you know, they've done some, you know, some of his, you know, I mean, you know, I'm liberal, so I obviously have to hate Fox News, but it's still, sometimes I watch
apparently
that.
Fox News is too liberal this election.
Apparently.
Haven't you heard that?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I got to say, I have to confess, I watch the Megyn Kelly show all the time. I don't know why. I can't stop. I'm like, stop, Kara, and then I watch it.
The last,
I like her.
The last institution I want to ask you about, you actually brought up, and that's BuzzFeed.
Yeah.
I think you correctly characterized the view that a lot of people have, and that there's sort of like a schadenfreude going on now, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You know, oh, look, their revenues are cut in half, ha ha. But the reality is, the revenues are still larger than everybody else's, even in half of that, right?
I think
why do people have such a strong reaction to BuzzFeed?
Because of the list thing. I think people got a little bit like all they are
so
is
much
bullshit.
more than that, though.
I agree. I think they've done some amazing journalism. I think they're trying interesting things. I don't know if journalism is the heart of what they're doing. Obviously, they're moving into video heavily. That's been reported a lot. But I do, and then some of their videos are silly. Some of them are good. I think the question is, look, and by the way, you know what? Most of journalism, like the pages, not the news pages, everyone had crossword puzzles. Everybody had lists. Everybody had style sections and comics. And so, like, to pretend that everything was so fantastic in the old days is just bullshit. But the fact of the matter is, they celebrate their viralness, and I think it irritates people. And all they're saying is we want to be popular, which should be what journalists want to be also, besides being good. You want to be good. You shouldn't focus on traffic only, but you can't ignore it. You shouldn't ignore it like it's like awful. I think obviously the first thing is to focus on great content, and that's it.
Right.
But I think with BuzzFeed, I think someone's got to succeed in modern media. And so why do we like to tear down every single thing that's attempted? And if you're not experimental in this period, you're not going to be, and this is coming from someone who's worked for the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. Like, you know, you can, I remember years ago, and this is, and we can answer questions, is I was at the Wall Street Journal, I kept pushing them to get in blogs and digital, and I was like, this is the kids love this. I kept saying, the kids love this. And there were 2 times that it just annoyed me because of the mentality, the insular and arrogant mentality that old media had. Was at one point they were doing a study on why they should have a Saturday journal. Do you remember those? Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. And I was like, no, let's not have one. Nobody wants to read a friggin' Wall Street Journal on Saturday. Like, it's homework.
It's work.
It's homework.
Right.
Like, oh, more homework, yay. So what I was, and it's a very good product and everything else, but they were like, how can we get young people to read the journal? They had a little, like one of those horrible meetings that you had to have back then. And I was sitting in the back, and they seldom invited me, even though I really was the digital, the person. How can we get the young people to not look at the internet and look at, the Wall Street Journal in a print edition? And I'm like, so they went around the room, and they said, Kara, what do you think? Like, oh, she's going to say something awful. And I said, here's my idea. Tape a joint between every frigging page, and they'll read the print edition. And they're like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, like they're not reading it. Stop it, stop. Like, provide them with digital things, provide them with interesting things. They're not stupid. They acted like young people were stupid. They're not stupid. Millennials aren't stupid. They just aren't. They like great content too, and so that drove me crazy. And then the second thing was they were always denigrating, blogs, like as if it was like the clap. And so they were going, blogs, like they make so many mistakes on blogs, like that kind of thing. Like I was in a meeting, and so I had the list of mistakes all the reporters in the rooms had made, and I go, I noticed you made 13 mistakes last year that had to be corrected in the corrections page, and you made 26. Ooh, you should be fired. But and so I was like, you all make mistakes, and blogs are only going to get better, and you're only going to get worse because the economic cycle for you is bad. And so I just thought the non-open-mindedness of it drove me nuts and wanted me to run screaming from the room.
Line up, and while you're doing that, I'm going to finish the second half of this question. Microphone on that side, microphone on that side if you have questions for Kara, and we'll use all the time we have. The thing about the BuzzFeed thing, just to go back to that 1 second, is that people are doing the end zone dance thinking that somehow this is the end of BuzzFeed. It's not the end of BuzzFeed. No. Or it's not somehow a negative. It doesn't disable the business model. And by the way, things are not bad generally with this as the kind of first...
No, not at all.
String being pulled from the sweater. Ken Doctor has a piece on Neiman Lab this week. Oh, Mashable. Oh, Yahoo. Oh, BuzzFeed's revenues.
Yahoo's a whole
everything
different...
everything is so bad.
By the way, Yahoo's a whole different goat rodeo.
Is everything so bad?
No, not at all. Okay. There's never been a greater time for content, I think. I am excited to read from lots of places. Even the New York Times is really vibrant lately. I don't know if you've noticed it. There's some fantastic work they've been doing. I don't read the New York Times in print. I think for years now. I read it all online, and I read it in different places, and their interactive stuff has been great. But it's everywhere, and there's really great stuff everywhere. So I really think, it's by journalists' nature to be depressed about things, and some of it is depressing because it's changing.
And there's a whole industry of people who quite candidly judge journalism as depressing, honestly, but don't actually do journalism.
It sounds dumb, but I have a P&L. I've had a P&L. I understand business a little bit since I have employees. I've been figuring out how to make money from it. I really do understand. I did strike gold with the conferences, but I thought about it. I learned myself some business, and one of the things I really don't like is journalists that don't understand business. I think there's a horrible term that I think it's Jessica Lesson, who I really admire. It's reporterpreneur, which I hate that word. I hate all those words, but I think if you don't understand the basics of your economics of your business today, you're an idiot. And I don't like being lectured to by people who've never run a business. That's one of the things.
Questions? Got one right there?
Questions?
Questions on either side?
Oh my God, journalists with no questions. Now I'm depressed.
Have done everything here. Ma'am. Hi.
I'm Rosa from El País, but I live in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So I've heard recently that you would like to be the mayor. So
yes.
What could you do, and what do you think Mr. Ed Lee is doing wrong? Also, I would like to ask you, I've seen you in the Silicon Valley series.
Yeah.
So how is it acting like being you and making jokes of you? So
well, I played myself, and so I felt like I knew the character well.
How did you do? Was it a good performance?
I dove deep. I think I had 14 seconds of time. I was brilliant. I should have won the Emmy, and I didn't. I feel that was a real snub. I think it was sexist and anti-gay. No, it was fun. I thought it was important for our brand to get on it. I love the show. I love Mike Judge. I think he really depicts Silicon Valley beautifully. And so when he asked me, he actually came and asked for some advice about certain people. You can clearly see who those characters, like the guy that's Mark Cuban, and I know Mark really well, so I was able to make it worse. Make it worse. Here's some secrets. So I was helping him, and he just said, would you mind playing you? And I said, no. And so they did two. One was I was bothering Gavin Belson, that guy is fantastic. That actor is a wonderful guy, and bothering him about some stuff. And then Gavin came to our code conference, a fake. It honestly was fantastic. They made it look just like our code conference. And, then he compares, they used a thing when Tom Perkins said that it was like crystal knocked against the billionaires in San Francisco, which was just like appalling. They did the same thing. It's like he compared the persecution of Jews to what's happening to billionaires, same thing, and it was like, and they used it for comedy, but it wasn't funny when Tom Perkins said it, it was a little funny, but it was great. It was great. The only thing is when it was an all-day filming, and he was, again, the actor was fantastic, and they brought the crowd in, and it was a little too diverse, the crowd. I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you, there's way too many diversity going on in this crowd of conference goers, but otherwise it was great. It was fun on that. And then on Mayor, I have been saying this for a while, but nobody believes me because I say all kinds of crazy stuff, like I'd like to act in a movie with Jennifer Lawrence or something. I've never said that. I just said that for the first time. I've been saying it a while because I think one of the things that's important is I've always been civically minded, even though I haven't been very civic. I wanted to join the military a long time ago. I know it sounds crazy, but my dad was in the military, and I wanted to, but I was gay, and I didn't want to pretend I wasn't. And so, you ask, I tell kind of thing. That was the problem. Those Clintons, when they did that. So I wanted to do that, and I was going to go into the CIA or the State Department. So I've always wanted to serve in some way. I think it's important for us to serve civically. I think our citizens, I think we abrogate our government to professional politicians, and we get what we got. We get, I said this on CNBC, that if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. And so I think it's really important. I think the economic inequality in San Francisco has gotten really disturbing. You live there, there's no easy answers. I think there has to be some rapprochement between the tech industry, which is the most important, and rich. They're so rich. This should work, right? And so that's the thing. And so I think it's really important to address economic inequality issues. I think there's all kinds of issues around growth, obviously. There's a great story in the New York Times today you should all read about the YIMBYs, yes, in our backyard, all these issues around construction and stuff like that. I'm very interested in the gender inequality issues and things like that. I think that our government needs to be more responsive and digital. I'm not going to address Ed Lee. I think people think he's in the pockets of the tech industry. I don't think I'm someone you would imagine to be in the pockets of anybody. At the same time, it's kind of ridiculous. The kind of level of rage that is in our civic life right now, where nobody can agree on anything, is exhausting. I think it's this Trumpian mentality has got to stop.
But speaking of Trumpian, isn't your 11-year-old right this idea of you as a liberal Trump is both ridiculous and also brilliant in this respect? You speak your mind.
Yeah.
You often say things that are politically incorrect.
But I don't speak my mind and say racist, sexist, and misogynist.
But your personality is not the personality of a conventional politician.
Right, exactly.
If you run, you will go peak Kara on us,
if we have to compliment Donald Trump, if you insist, and I can, he's absolutely correct. And some of the things he says, you're like the stuff around the rulemaking.
The substance of it is of less interest to me than the acknowledgement of his affect.
Right.
And your affect actually is say what
Similar.
you think.
Yes.
Say what you think.
Right, exactly.
Even if it's not politically
That's
the
right.
way that you typically
That's
run
right.
for
And
office.
I think unfortunately because of the media and others that people can't what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? And I think that's why he hits with certain people. Unfortunately, some of the things he says, some of them, although recently the stuff on the rulemaking, I agree with him. They can't do these closed door bullshit changes. Right. Anyway, it's an interesting.
So you run, this will be the you who runs.
Yes.
No different than that.
No, and then I will get drummed out of office on some horrible.
Well, we have nobody over there, so we're going back over there. Thank you very much. Sir.
Hi.
Hello.
Jonathan Gross from Drury University. And I was just curious, when you got subsumed into Vox, did
Yeah.
you lose some of your Recode? Did you lose some of your Recode culture, or
No.
have you been? And did Vox try to impose some Vox?
Your colleague Trey
Voxness.
Brundred is right there. Look exactly at
Yes.
him when you answer this question. And if you want to talk shit
Trey-
about Vox,
Trey-
he's fine with that.
Trey did implant a thing in my neck that I don't know what it was. Trey, what do you think? Do you think I've been pushed down in any way? No, absolutely not. I think that the reason we selected Vox was precisely for the reason that they did send me talking points. Did you see those the other day on the Slack? Here are the talking points of Vox. I literally didn't read it at all. Like, I don't know. We are a new media organization who cares about content. I'm sure it said that somewhere in there, but actually, it's actually true. I read the beginning. I'm like, oh God, talking points, as if. But that's good. They do that. That's fine. One of the reasons we selected them was and talked to them and got into discussions with them is because one. And I'm not kissing up to him. Jim Bankoff, I've known for 20-some years, is one of the most high-quality publishing thinkers around. He just cares about the media. At the same time, he has great business sense. It's very rare in digital to have such a thoughtful person. So that was one of the reasons, is Jim. And then I met Trey, which I know a lot of CTOs, and most of them I'm like, stop talking to me right now. And Trey is one of the most thoughtful people about media, how media interacts with technology. He cares about the media, yet he understands that technology is a critical part. He wants to be a partner. And I think for so long, either the journalists ignored the technology people, or the technology people were like, ugh, to the media people. There's always been a back and forth. At the Washington Post, they separated out the online division from in another place from the thing. That's ridiculous. The technology is critical. It's not like it's printing presses. This is how you deliver the news and how you design the products is critically important. And so someone like Trey, who is so thoughtful about the journalism and at the same time understands the importance of the technology, you cannot succeed if you don't have someone like that. In terms of letting us do what they want, Vox actually, unlike BuzzFeed or the Huffington Post or the other organizations, we have distinct brands. We have 8 distinct brands. Eater. No, I'm supposed to mention them all. I'm going to forget.
Apparently you did read Slack.
I started to read part of it. I can't help myself, but I was laughing mostly through it, but because it was a nice laugh, like, oh, aren't they cute? But they have lots of distinct brands. The Eater one, which I loved before that, Curbed, Racked, and others. And so they have taken the strategery of doing individualized brands, so a little like Condé Nast, I guess, in terms of different things. And so they don't want us to not be us. That's what's critically important. I think they bought us for who we are and not to become something else. Now, we're just about to move to the new their platform, Chorus, which is called Unison, right? Unison. Anyway, they're moving to their new platform. We were on WordPress before. I'm thrilled because of all the tools it gives us. They have this amazing thing called Auto-Tune that lets us make charts and different picture things and things that are delightful to users. So far, a year in, and I would say if I hated them, I would. But so far, everything has been additive to us. I think we've been additive to them.
Well, for instance, your conference culture, which
Yes.
has been such a big part of your success, ported over to Vox, gives them an opportunity to
get more conferences.
To do conferences.
Yeah, they don't know how to do them.
Discrete
Right,
brands
that's one of the thinking. Like we're thinking of a food tech conference for Eater with us together. Ezra Klein is doing a Vox conference. We've been helping him. We brought our team in, which is the best in the business. They were not in event space. And if you're a media company, you need other revenue streams. And this is, and it's still the event space everyone's now rushed into.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that.
You know what I mean? So, Oh, he has an event?
We're brothers and sisters in our own sense.
Anyway, it's really important they're a great organization. They got an enormous amount of money from NBC the way BuzzFeed did. They're well-funded. I think they've got, again, someone has to succeed. So you have to align yourself with the best people you can if you're in this space. And you have to align yourself with people who are digitally friendly and native. You will not succeed if you don't. And we had a lot of we're pretty good. Like I'm pretty digital, but not as digital as they are. And so I understood that if I didn't align myself, we were going to get washed. And
I know the answer to this, but if the opportunity comes up for Recode to write about Vox Media as a media brand digitally, no holds barred.
No, not at all. I think we've done that several times. What we have to do, though, is there's some, when news comes out, like, should we really cover it? Does it really matter if someone's joining that we, or not? I mean, we've done it a couple times, and actually, Jim Bankoff called me. I forget which story it was. It was the funding story. It was some story we found out about totally separately.
Right.
And Jim's like, did someone on Slack tell you? And I was like, no, we're fucking reporters. We can find these things out without your help on Slack. You know what I mean? Like, we don't sneak around and stalk the Slack rooms and find our stories. So we found it out from an investment banker, I'm sure. But we found out something, and we wrote the story. It was when they were moving into Facebook, or I don't remember. But we didn't care.
Hard to imagine anybody can control what you do.
No,
certainly
exactly.
After this 45
Right.
minutes. Are we now done?
Yeah.
We're done? Okay. Kara Swisher.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you all. Thank you, Rosenthal.